Hello, in the two previous episodes we have explored two different ways of showing or hiding a field in a form based on our selection. So if we selected a post should be password protected, then we show the password field. If we selected another value, then it did not show the password field. And now we are going to also explore dynamic forms, but a more complex example. So we are going to use the gem city state, where we have a list of countries, states that belong to a country, and cities that belong to a state. And based on the selected country, we are going to display the available states, and based on the selected state, we are going to display the available cities. And again, we will not need any page refreshes to do this. And it is a more complex case because it also requires some complex validations. We should validate that the selected city belongs to the selected state and that the selected state belongs to the selected country. So without further ado, let's start by having a new Rails application and adding the gem city state and seeing how it works. Yeah, I have a newly created Rails app and I'm going to create a scaffold, let's say addresses. So Rails generates scaffold, addresses, and an address will have a country, a state, a city, and some kind of details. Okay, let's run Rails tp migrate. And I will save it. So commit scaffold addresses. Okay, now let's run the Rails server and have a look at what we've got. So I have /addresses, and we can, well, just input the country, state, and city at the moment. So let's make these select fields based on city state gem. I will first of all start by adding the gem city state, bundle add city state. Okay, and let's try using this gem in the console first. So Rails console, I will say cs.countries, and we have a list of countries as a hash of keys and values. Let's find a state, so let's say cs.states for US, and a list of US states. And let's find cities in a specific state. So let's find all the cities in New Jersey, for example. So cs.cities, NJ, and US. And we see a list of cities in New Jersey. Okay, and based on this, we are going to have select dropdowns inside our address form. So let's try doing that. I'll quit this, start the Rails server, and well, let's go to the form. Address form. So instead of a text field here, and here, we're going to have select fields. Let's add these select options inside our model. I will go to address.rb and say def countries will be cs.countries. Countries. Let's see if it works. I will go to the form and say form.select country from address.countries. And you see it works, but by default I have the key, not the value of the country, so I'll say address countries dot values, or actually dot invert, so that we are going to see the names, but we are going to select the keys. I refresh and you see we have a nice list of countries. Now let's have a list of states. And again, we'll have select state. Here we'll have address dot actually states dot invert. So let's define our states. I'll go to address and go def states. And I will say cs.states based on the country that we have selected for this address. Let's see if it works. I will refresh, and well, I don't have any state available now. Okay, and same with cities. I will say def cities will be cs cities based on state and country. Let's add this to our form. So I will say form.select city based on address.cities. And you see it says undefined method map for nil class because, well, we don't have any state or country. So I will say either we find this or we display emptiness. Okay. And, well, we can select a country, a state if it is present, and the city. Let's start adding some validations, because now we can just like have a country, I create address, and well, it kind of creates, but we didn't have an opportunity to even select a state or city. Let's start by adding some validations. So I will say validates country, presence, true, and same for everything else. State, city, next details also. Okay, let's add these validations and try to do something. So I'll destroy this one, I'll go new address. So I select country Andorra, I submit and I see the states, I submit and I see the cities. I will click submit once again, I'll try changing the state, and you see the cities have been updated, but it would still be possible for me to create something invalid. Let's try creating something invalid. I will select something like United States. Okay. And add something to the details and create. And you see it has created with an invalid city that doesn't belong to this country, and state also that, well, it was created based on another country. And also I don't have an opportunity to have blank country, state or city at the moment in the form, so I'm going to update the form for this. I will say allow blank, true, and also an empty hash for HTML attributes. Okay, let's try once again. I will go and create a new address. Okay, it might be include blank. Let's see if include blank works. Include blank does work. Okay, I will change allow blank to include blank. And so now I'm trying to create a country, state, and city. Now I change the country, add some kind of details, and the validation passes, and it kind of created, but the validations should not pass. So I need to add more complex validations. I have to validate the state is included in the list of available states for this selected country. So instead of having validate state presence true, I will say presence, well, except to validate presence, will validate inclusion. So yeah, validate state, inclusion, and we're going to validate inclusion in the available states. So in will pass a lambda record. Well, this is like this record, the address, and here we'll say record dot states dot keys. And some countries don't have a state, like Vatican, so I will say allow blank true. And same with validation of presence. We'll validate the presence if the country has any states. So I will say presence if, again, record, then record dot states dot present. Okay, so this way I'm validating presence if there are any states available based on the selected country, and that the state is included in the available list. Same with cities, we'll do a very similar validation. So instead of validating city presence true, we will validate the inclusion of the city in available cities, and presence if there are any cities based on this state and country. So you see more complex validations. And let's see if this works. I will go back and try to create a new address. Let's select a country. I will submit, select a state, submit, select a city, and then I will change the country to something different, add some kind of details. Okay, so record cities keys doesn't work. It is just record cities. Let's see if it works. So I will select a country, a state, a city, change the country, just try to submit something that is invalid, create address, and you see state is not included in list and city is also not included in list. Let's try once again to submit something valid. So city can't be blank. Okay, state is not included in the list, though it should be included in the list. Well, it is just a validation kind of problem, because let's have a look at the state and at the available states. Let's say address.states, and let's have a look at the state that we have selected. I'll try once again. So we have selected her, and it is available, but here it is as a string, and here it is as a symbol. So we are comparing a string to a symbol in our validations right here, and it is failing us. So I will try to say states.with indifferent access. So this with indifferent access is going to allow us to compare this string to this symbol, and it was valid. You see, now here we have a string and here we have a string, so we compare a string to a string and it is valid, thanks to this with indifferent access thing. Okay, so it kind of worked. Our validations seem to be working. Let's also try to select a city based on the state that is invalid. Click update and you see city is not included in the list. So I have to select a city that is valid. Okay, and here we did, I think, the hardest part of the work with the jumped city state. We have defined our collections for select, and we have added the validations that the city should be present if there is a state, and the city should be included in the list of states. Same for state inside countries. And let's just try once again with a city that with a country that doesn't have any states. Let's say Vatican City. I click create address and you see we don't need to have a state, and we don't have a state and city because Vatican doesn't have any cities or states. So we are not trying to have a state or a city present for Vatican. I can just create having country selected without city and state. But let's go back. Here, for example, we have country US and state 05. And it doesn't look really readable. We have just the codes of the countries and states. So in our views, let's display the human readable values. So again, here I will say def, let's say country label, and the country label will be country. So countries, inside this list of countries, I'm going to find our country. Let's see if it works. I'll go to address partial, and instead of having country, I will say country label. Okay, it didn't work because we'll need to add this with indifferent access to our countries so that it finds it. And you see, now we have displayed the human readable name of the country, not just the country code. And we'll do the same for our states. So we'll have our state label. And we'll say states, and in the states, in this collection of states, we're going to find our state that we have selected for this particular address. And again, I go back, I will go here and say state label, and we have this human readable states visible where they are present. Okay, and now let's again return to the most important thing that we have possibly all come here for the reactive form, so that we don't have to submit the form each time and get all these validation errors when we make a selection, so that whenever we select something, the form auto-submits, we don't get any validation errors, but the next fields are populated based on what we have selected previously. And well, to do this, we'll start by going back to our form. And yes, we're going to add a button. I will say form.button. It will be named validate, for example. It will have form action. It will lead to new address path. Form method will be get. And to make this work, we will need to update our controller. So we will go to address controller. We will add address params to our new action, and instead of having require, we'll have fetch and allow blank, so that when we go to new address, it works. Now let me try doing something. I will select, let's say, Ukraine, click validate. You see we had a form submission with a get request. That's why we have this authenticity token inside our URL. It is the form's authenticity token. I can select Kiev region, validate. I can select a city inside the Kiev region, and well, it kind of works. So it is the first step. Now we need to make this button submit without actually clicking submit, and for this we're going to use stimulus. So I'll say Rails generate stimulus form element. Yeah, that's the way I decided to name it. Form element controller, and I will say static targets will be remote button. On connect, I will say this dot remote button hidden true, and I will have an action auto submit, and I will trigger this button to be clicked. So this button, then I will add the target remote button to it. I will say this remote button target. Yeah, actually I forgot the word target here. Dot click. Okay, now I need to use this stimulus controller in our form. So I will wrap this all into the stimulus controller. I'll say div data controller form element. Now to this button I will add the target. It is going to be remote button target. So data form element target will be remote button. And when we select the country or state, we are going to trigger the submission of this button. So here I will say data action on change. I will trigger the controller form element and the action auto submit. And then we are going to find an element inside our div with a data controller form element and click it. Okay, now I need to actually close this div. I'll close it right here. Okay, and to the state I will also add this data action. So now I refresh. Okay, now I'll start the server once again. I refresh. And you see the button is being hidden when the stimulus controller is initialized. Let's go back and create a new address. Again, I will create like, let's say UAE. You see, I selected UAE and the states have been updated. I select any country and the states have been updated. Each time I have this full page form submission. So I can select cities, states. When I select a state, the city list is refreshed. So looks quite fine. Now we will make it so that we don't have to actually like submit the whole page, and we're going to use a turbo frame for this. So we'll wrap the content that we want to have dynamic into the turbo frame. I will say equals turbo frame tag city state select. Yeah, you can make any name. Do and drop all the fields that we need updated into the turbo frame tag. Okay, like this. And now I just need to say that when I click this button, I will submit it only to the turbo frame tag. So the button will have a target. So turbo frame will be CS select. And this button is not going to be a full page refresh button. It will not submit the whole form. It is only going to submit whatever is inside this turbo frame tag. So we are scoping this button to this particular turbo frame tag. Okay, let's see if it works. I'll go back to addresses, new address. I will select the country, select the state, and you see the URL is not being updated because we are updating only the content inside this turbo frame. Let's demonstrate it once again. I will say equals time.zone.now. outside the tuber frame and inside. Now I will refresh, and one of them is not going to change. One is going to change. So you see, I'm submitting the form, and only the content inside this tuber frame changes. And like this, I have a dynamic form where, based on the selection of one field, I can have some content updated from the server in other fields. Okay, looks quite good. Let's try to edit. So I will go to edit, I will press refresh the page, and looks quite fine. So editing seems to be working. Update address, city should be present, okay. Looks quite good. One more thing I would do. So when I go to a new address, let's say I select a country, a state, then I make a page refresh, and there can be cases when I make a page refresh, but the country or state, well, something in your selection will be still visible. And so that the form is actually cleared, definitely cleared when you make a page refresh, I'm going to add one more stimulus controller. I will say Rails generate stimulus form refresh. And going to form refresh controller, I will say on connect this dot element dot refresh, I think. Yeah, actually reset. Okay, and I will add this controller to our form. So I will say data controller form refresh. Yeah, I think I should have named it reset. But anyway, by adding this form refresh controller to our form, we will ensure that there is no strange data visible inside our fields when we refresh and expect no data to be present. So again, I will go and try to edit something, and we have all the correct fields visible. And yeah, this is basically it. We have two conditional fields that update values based on the previous selections, and we don't have a full page refresh. So I think in the last 3 episodes, I've well covered all the possible scenarios of having conditional fields or conditional data inside fields inside a form. And based on this, you're free to make any kind of dynamic forms that you want. And you see, you don't really need a lot of JavaScript to do this. Yeah, thank you.